So what we're going to learn, let's go. Yes, there we go. So this is broken down into 4 different stages, 4 different parts for the design lecture. The first part is the design philosophy for forest gardening, and this is kind of covered previously as well in planning a forest garden. The second part is the benefits of designing, why you would design, and then the third part is principles. And again, this is broken up into general principles and specific kind of principles, and there is there is overlap between this and the planning stage, but it's worth bearing this in mind. It's worth persevering with this, because it's quite important to get the design bit right. And I think really the important thing is getting the structure right. The other parts you can worry about later, whereas it's the structure, it's getting the trees, the kind of the big structures, the polytunnel, the polytunnel, the pond, getting the windbreaks, getting this stuff right, and that's the bit that you want to spend a bit. That's why you want to spend a bit of time on it. The other parts, the shrub and the ground cover and what you put where, that's important, but that's not so important, and you can adjust it. You can wing it more easily. But as I said before, make the big mistakes early, and then so there's general principles, and then there's specific principles, and this is kind of really about gardening, so it applies to all sorts of gardening. And then we're looking at example of a design process. I've created a kind of make-believe map of a garden, simplified version of a garden. I'm not sure, I don't think it's very visible, and I'm pretty sure it won't be that visible on this live stream, because it's quite low resolution. So what I will be doing for the next for the course proper, I will do some high resolution images. Oh, and I've got something really cool to show you as well. I've worked out how to do zoom. Let me see if it works. Yes. So I can zoom in, which is cool, and you can see my really low resolution images. But this might come in useful for the other part. There we go. Good. Okay, so that's the final part, the example of the design process. And then in the Zoom session, what I'll try and do is catch up with everyone, people who've got kind of specific design questions and how best to go around it. And thanks so much for everyone's feedback as well. It's been absolutely invaluable. And what I will be doing is doing, I don't know what you call them, not interstitial, there's a name for it, little videos showing the actual practical examples. So there's the measuring, I think it was Julie, I can't remember, sorry, somebody was talking about it last week. So like measuring and design will definitely be up here. I will show you how to print a map out and how to do a paper map too. And I'll go through the kind of design process in little extra videos to the kind of slideshowy thing. So here we go. Let's get cracking with philosophy. And I've done this. This is a new feature, a heading, a blank heading in the middle of a page. This is philosophy. So I've broken it down, and then the breadcrumbs you can see along the bottom. You can see where you're at with each of these. So philosophy. A little bit of reworking required on this, but this is essentially it. Martin Crawford's, where's it gone? Martin Crawford's book, which I bring out every single week. Martin Crawford's book is kind of invaluable. Where is it? There it is. And that is Working with Nature to Grow Edible Crops. Kind of sums it up very nicely indeed. That this is the guiding principle. Now, there's a woman called Annie Kelsey, who's great actually. I haven't had much to do with her. Hi, Pete and Abby. Annie Kelsey's got a new book called The Garden of Equal Delights. And it's really interesting actually, because she put it on Facebook. And it's kind of interesting because she's looking at the kind of reasons for gardening, and like focusing on the actual gardener and how you approach stuff. And that really is about it's about creating an edible ecosystem where you're an equal part in the garden. So you're not just like the dominating force, and your will shall be brought to fruit. It's much more you're playing a kind of what do they call it, with like a key, like with animals you have like a wolf is a key, it's a key species. You've got like that kind of role where you're introducing species and taking species away and adjusting the balance, but you're not like the be all and end all for the garden. But well worth checking out. It's only released yesterday. I just ordered a copy. I've seen a couple of bits of she's kind of put a couple of chapters out, so it's really interesting actually. It's worth investigating. Where am I? Yep. So the kind of the philosophy for this is about creating an edible ecosystem, and this is. And what I thought really exciting was just yesterday I was thinking about my motivation for doing it, and it's my aim is to create a productive edible ecosystem. You don't have to feel like you're doing it straight away. It's something to aim for. It's this idea of this is what you've got in mind, and if it's not working, then adjust it. And it's a kind of progression. It's a process. It's not something you ever arrive at, and I think that's really important. Is this kind of sense of this is where you're headed, and it's a really personal thing as well. Again, this comes from Annie's book. This sense of it's you and the garden, without getting to. It's not about how it looks to other people. So that's actually far more comfortable. I was out gardening yesterday, and doing some mulching, and I'm kind of less and less worried about what the garden looks like, because lots of it looks like a real mess. It's not really important. That's not the important part. The important part is where you're at with the garden and how it's progressing. Yeah. And then native plants. Yeah, native plants. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so native plants for wildlife. And this is another side which I'm quite surprised how much I've been moving towards towards wildlife gardening. But it's an important part. It's really you start to look up. It's like having kids. For those who've had kids, you can understand if the first time in your life you're not worried just about yourself and what you're doing or what you're up to. You're looking after other people, and you're looking, and you got to look out for their needs and their support for them. And it's the same with wildlife. You start to engage with wildlife. You start to think about, well, what plants would they like, and what features. And I think there's massive. It is exciting. There's an awful lot that you can do within a forest garden, whilst still being a productive garden. It is most definitely a wildlife garden because it's an ecosystem. And I just had another idea, which is not my idea, but this kind of the lovely thing about a garden is that you have the opportunity to create diverse habitats that you wouldn't normally see in such a small space. So you can have not excessive biodiversity, but you can have more biodiversity than you would normally kind of have, because you can create these different habitats. And it's not that much space. You don't need that much space for it. So like log piles, or there's a chap called John Little who he's on Twitter actually. It's really worth looking at. It's that whole idea, of you can design and build wildlife features which add to the garden, but also benefit the wildlife too. John Little, I will actually put them in, because I do think I saw some of his stuff on Twitter the other day, and it was great. And I'm just building I'm looking at making a grass roof. So I've bought his kind of online book. So I totally well worth checking out. So I just had a message in the chat. Flies in the sugar bowl. Bloody wildlife just stung me on the foot. Yeah. Pete and Abby, have you read Mary Reynolds' Garden Awakening? I haven't. I actually really need to write that down. I'll make notes at the end of it. Mary Reynolds is like a kind of key advocate. She's a recovering garden designer, and she's into rewilding on a local scale. Really kind of interesting. She did do an episode with Sarah Wilson, Roots and All podcast. So let me just find that. No, I'll find it later. Roots and All pod. I'll find it later. Okay. So yeah, really, really exciting stuff. And I think this is what's good about it, is that there's all this opportunity, there's all this potential. It's not. It kind of opens up. It opens up the garden to a whole load of different things that you hadn't possibly thought hadn't thought about before. So it's they're rabbit holes, not necessarily rabbit holes, but you can go down them and you can explore them, and people have, you can find the thing that works for you and works for your space and where you're at. So it's kind of, it's really, really, really exciting stuff, actually. Yes. Okay. So this is the book that I recommend. There's a picture of it for kind of more a kind of overview of the kind of morals and ethics of gardening, and really does come down to gardening with natives. And that's what I was going to say as well. Gardening with natives it's really exciting and liberating, because you're limiting the palette, and you can have it. This is like having your cake and eating it with forest gardening, because you've got your exotics, your Mediterranean brassicas, and because you eat them, so that's okay. But then you've also got your natives as well, and you can say, well, you want to have a proportion of native plants in your garden. So you can have both, and I think a forest garden is a really nice example of how they can actually work really, really well together. There is a chap so worth finding out about as well. Douglas Tallamy, and 2/3 for the birds is one of his sayings. He's got the wildlife gardening. He's an American chap, but it's that idea of 2/3 native plants, and that supports the local ecosystem in terms of insects, and then that supports the birds. And that's what we can do with forest gardens, no matter what, where you are in the world. That's what you can do. Well worth checking out his stuff. He's got I haven't read it, and I've just heard him on podcasts. There's a Roots and All podcast, and there's a Growing Greener podcast. He's on that as well. I'll write that down too. Roots and All podcast. Go and check them out. They're well worth looking at. So yeah, it feels like there needs to be another. Feels like yeah. Sorry, Pam's just put a message in the chat that thought you were going to say 2/3 of the produce was for the birds. That's what it feels like sometimes. Oh shoot, that reminds me. I've got some cherries. I bet the birds have had them. Yeah, plant your cherry tree near the house. That's one of my design tips for the day. Yes, it does feel like 2/3 of the produce does go for the birds sometimes, and this is actually a really good. This is a really, really good. There's so many messages coming. This is a really good idea as well. Is that when you're designing stuff, you're designing the kind of high intensity areas. You bring them nearer the house, and that also means those kind of crops that you need to keep an eye on. So like we've got raspberries, which the birds are helping themselves to, which have been really bad this year because of the drought, and I didn't water them. But also cherries and and possibly cabbages as well. But so there are some things that you can do, but bring the kind of high intensity stuff closer to the house, the high maintenance stuff to the house, closer to the house. Cool. Oh, there's great notes in here. Cool. I'll get a move on with this. So, the other native plants for wildlife, and there's a fantastic website which I have mentioned before, but I will mention again, is the database of insects and their food plants. And this is I haven't got any. Database of there's some funny stuff going off in the messaging. Database of foodstuffs and insects and their food plants, and it's really, really interesting because you can actually see the interactions between the insects and which their food plants are. And this is a screenshot. Here is a screenshot of common oak. I think there's 274 insect species which are noted, have an interaction with the common oak, and those are the ones which have been noted. And that's just insects. That's not all the birds and Oh crikey! Oh, other creatures. So it's just, it's incredible. It's like the number of species that a plant supports is actually, it's a bit of an eye opener. And then once you start to see that, you start then to go, well, should I have a native hedge wild windbreak, or should I have a mixture? So I've got American autumn olive, but I've also got Gelder rose, which is a native, and I've got Amelanchier Juneberry in there as well, which is non-native. But I've got a lot of Gelder rose in there. So for me, that's really important. Even though you don't really eat the Gelder rose berries, they have a very important role. They're a windbreak, and they're also providing habitat, and they're also providing food in terms of foliage and also in terms of fruit. So yeah, check that out. Database of insects and their food plants, and also check out the RHS website. So I'll just bring up that for the notes as well. I have mentioned this a lot before, I know, but I'm not really going to apologise for it. Yep, and I think this is the other side of it as well. Is it's a stepping stone to the landscape, and I think this is another additional importance of wildlife gardening in the forest gardening context. Is that also connects you with the wider landscape. So obviously only plant native plants, and that's native plants that are native to where you are, not native plants from somewhere else, because then they wouldn't be native. But you get the idea is that it's connecting your garden with the wider landscape, and also with the political engagement as well. I mean, I know that if you were to just listen to BBC Radio 4, then you'd actually be really depressed, which I think is a very good reason to take a break from it sometimes. But there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of good work, and I think it's broadening that political engagement, political and lowercase political engagement with the environment, and pushing for change, because this goes beyond party political. This is something that is much more fundamental level, that we have to take care of the environment, and we have to engage in the political process in whatever way to promote policies that serve the environment and serve people. They're not serving profit. End of political party broadcast. Okay, and then benefit. Where are we? Oh, there we are. Right. I won't get involved in the chat. It's very funny about non-native course. Right. Okay. The benefit of designing, and again, this is a bit of crossover with last week's lecture about planning. Really, it's about making the big mistakes early, and it's easier to make mistakes on paper than it is to make mistakes out in the garden. And this particularly applies to large trees, large shrubs, and big structures. So I'm talking polytunnels, greenhouses, hardcore paths which are made up with hardcore or hard surfaces, and windbreaks. So play around with ideas and do not worry about how it looks. A friend of mine, Dan, this is his plan, and he goes, "Oh no, it's my paper plan." I think it's brilliant. I think it's really, really good. I'm really impressed to see it, because it's whatever works for you, however it works. And and it's not about the map, it's about the territory. It's not about your plan, it's about how that plan is put into effect in your garden. So moving symbols is easier than moving physical things. And this is why the key thing to creating a map, again covered last week, the key thing to creating a map is to get the scale right. And that's whether it's a paper map or whether that's a CAD map or a computer map. And it's a place to document observations. So the observations that you made, in the planning process. The design is where those observations, you start to incorporate them into the features and the wish list of plants that you want to have. And this is the place where it all comes together. So you were combining the wish list of features and the wish list of plants on the map into the design, and the design is the process of moving these things around. Oh, I did have a quote for it. What was a quote? Oh, purposefully putting things in the right place is my kind of idea for design. And I should write things down. Okay. And then at the end of that, documenting observations. So this is Sun Surveyor, really good app that you can get for your phone, and it lets you know where the position of the sun is at different times of year, so that you can plan heights of windbreaks and positions of plants depending upon how much sun they need. So and combine the wish list into the design, which is a CAD map, and then break out that design, break it out into a schedule, and a schedule, just when you're going to do stuff, the order of things. Okay, I was going to write this down as well. Bit shuffling, and excuse me for a second. Cool. Lovely. Got to keep notes all the time. Right. So, yeah, going back to the planning, I might take this out actually of this one, but they're making a wish list. So you've got a wish list of the features that you want and a wish list of the plants that you want. So I'll make a note of that as well. Wish list, features and plants. And I've got some examples here too. So we can see the different examples. Where it does, yeah, structures, wildlife, features, harvest areas. You can read that. You can read that in your own time. I might be okay. Move examples. Okay, examples to planning. Okay, and then now on to principles. So we've got the kind of philosophy behind it, like it's productive and edible ecosystem is what you're trying to create. Then we've got the benefits of designing and incorporating incorporating the wish list of features and plants into your design and doing it on paper, so that you can make the big mistakes early. And finally, thirdly, principles. So I've got some general principles here. I kind of hope they're useful. So we'll see how we go. So attention, protection, accessibility, and iterative. The attention, I really missed out on this, I think, for doing the garden. First of all, you kind of forget that you need to have attention for a plant. Let's go to you need to have attention for a plant for it to do well. You need to be there. You need to have access to it. So this is the kind of idea that raised This is the idea that that if you see a plant in a particular place and then you are going past it, you are paying it attention. So bear this in mind, that those plants that require attention, and for me this is like perennial vegetables. This is why raised beds are like are a nice idea. To be honest, I wouldn't go with raised beds if I were to do it again. It's good for focusing the attention, but I would just have beds on the ground. I wouldn't bother with raised beds, and I wouldn't use plastic sheet mulch. I'm just trying to stop using it. I would use wood chip, which means more weeding and it means more maintenance, but there's less plastic. So but it's the idea of it's an area that's focused, that you have like a small area and you can move around the area, and then you got your attention on the plant. So really, really important. And I think this applies to young perennials. When you're getting a garden established, what I found, I tried growing Turkish rocket about 3 times, and it's a really nice plant actually. We had the shoots like broccoli, Buneus orientalis, but it kept getting eaten by slugs. So now what I've done is to grow it in a what's an annual raised bed, and it's kind of got to a certain height, and that's it. It's big enough to look after itself now. So young plants, you've got to treat young perennials as if they're annuals really, and they need attention. They need to be actually weeded to be able to kind of grow. So I would actually leave like an area without with a mulch on it in the early stages until the plants are established enough for you then to for those plants then to grow, depending on the plant, obviously. Okay, and then protection. Oh, attention, design outwards, and this is a kind of really, really important thing, I think, that I have only now, like 5 years after starting Forest Garden, that I kind of realised that you design from the centre of whatever it is that you're focusing on. So you design outwards. You start with a bit nearest the house, and this idea of permaculture where you're zoning. So you start close to the house and you work your way out. And I've just started doing this with the perennial vegetables as well. So we've got the annual polytunnel, annual veg, and I've got perennial beds on the periphery of that. And now I'm starting to go out to the next part, which is more fruit bushes, blackcurrants, gooseberries, and the like. And yep, so I'm doing it step by step. I tried doing the whole lot all at the same time. It kind of didn't work for me. It's just too much to take on board. I think much better to focus your attention, do one bit, and then just maintain that. Once it gets established, it's easy to maintain and move outwards. Walk around your garden every day. That's a little note to myself. And then protection. So general principle, windbreaks. Again, protecting from slugs so that you're weeding. Young plants need to be protected from slugs. And I didn't realise this, but the whole point of weeding and having a bare, well, mulched, but bare kind of compost mulch around a plant is so that it's not providing habitat for slugs. That's the kind of key thing. So the plant gets established and then you can use plant a ground cover around it. But so there's protection from predators, there's protection from the elements, so temperature. Polytunnels and greenhouses provide protection from the wind and also increase the temperature. I'd love to get a potting shed. That's my kind of luxury item that I'll have on a desert island. But a potting shed would be fantastic, just like a bit more sheltered space. And cold frames. I've got to build some cold frames because I've got a lot of plants now. It's too hot in the polytunnel. It's too exposed outside. I need to get some cold frames, nice kind of stage in between, and then windbreaks. And windbreaks particularly for a larger forest garden, absolutely essential to get the windbreaks in. And if you don't have a windbreak, you can, whilst the windbreaks are getting established, you can use a dead hedge or a nurse tree, which is a small tree, a small shrub that protects the young tree until it gets established. And then accessibility, again, signage, it depends on who's around, but paths and signage and seating, I didn't even think about. This is stuff that's coming back to me now, but it's just to have that, to have the space that you're sharing with other people. If you can say to other people that, can you go and get me some spinach, or where are the alliums? And other people need to know whereabouts stuff is, and by providing signage, sounds kind of silly, but is actually really, really useful. And other people, it kind of encourages access into that for other people. And also, paths, so important. I'm just redesigning the kind of fruit bush area. I'm redesigning it with path right into the centre, so it's like quite a big area, and then putting a path into the centre with paths around, so that you're never more than, I don't know if you can see that, like a metre, like stretching, like a 1 metre or 1.2 metres. The centre of the bed is never more than that really away. And it depends upon the crop that you're getting, so that's more important for perennial vegetables, but for the things less important for fruit bushes where you're not there all the time. But still, that you can walk into the centre of a bed is actually really, really useful thing to be able to do. And then a final thing for general principles, it's iterative. It's an iterative process. In design world, I've got 10 minutes. In design world, you have in software and websites, you have this design, build, evaluate kind of design process, and it's a spiral. It's not actually it's great. It's over time it becomes more and more focused, that you start off with a design, you build something and then you evaluate that, and then you go on to the next stage and you kind of come back to the design stage, and then you build that and you design it, and it's a refinement over time. So yeah, I think a spiral is actually a really, really good way of thinking about designing a forest garden. That it's not just one thing that you do, you build it, you evaluate it. It's an ongoing process, and I kind of rejig that around so it becomes plan, plant, and ponder. Nice bit of alliteration there. Okay, on to specific principles. I'm going to whiz through these because I've got the example to go through as well. So useful to someone, native plants. These are things to think about, specifically to think about when you've got a plant, and think, okay, what is this plant doing? First of all, part of that question is it native? Is it a native plant, which is kind of better for, generally native plants are better for wildlife because they're co-evolved. Think about where the aspect of the place that you want to put that plant. So the aspect is like where the sun, how much sun that plant would get in that position. Think about the soil, where you're planting, where you want to put that plant. Is the soil of the right acidity, the right pH, and is it of the right structure? Is it like is that plant happy in clay, if that's what you've got in that point? And then think about the space itself and the shape and how that plant then affects other plants. So there's a famous garden in New York called, I haven't been on chat actually for a while. Okay. Yeah, so there's a famous garden in New York State. Can't remember the name of it. Nope, forgotten. Anyway, the chap there, when he's he's a well-known garden designer, and he said when he's designing the garden, he thinks in terms of shapes, and like I want a tall, skinny one, or a big, bushy, round one, or a flat one, or a creeping one. And I think that's a really useful way, is to think about what shape will fit that space. And also because you don't want, this is like when you're designing your windbreaks, you want generally to have the taller windbreak plants on the north boundary of the property, because they won't cast any shade on your land. So think about the structure in terms of, I want a tall plant, I want a 20 meter tree, 20 meter tree will be fine there. It's on the northern boundary, for example, and that would be like, you could use an Italian alder as a windbreak, or a Bowles hybrid willow, for example. So think about the shape and the shape and the space that you've got, and then kind of work out the plant that will fit in there. And then finally, the actual plant itself. For all the previous principles, you need to know the size, the size of the plant, and what the conditions that it wants. So I'll just go through these quickly. So useful to someone. So that's a wide spectrum of someone, not just people, but wildlife and all sorts of different wildlife at different sizes. And whether it has what's called in permaculture terms a stacking function. It's just how many things can that plant do. This is a Symphytum ibericum. This is a dwarf comfrey. It grows to about 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters tall. Flowers in spring, kind of late spring, and it's a good ground cover plant, clumping ground cover plant, and provides fertility. Will grow in quite dry soil, big tap roots, and it's a good bee plant as well, non-native. But so it kind of has a lot of different functions, different things that it can do. Native is generally more useful than non-native for wildlife. Okay, so next up, native plants co-evolved. Talked about this before. Yeah, so I've mentioned all those. And I'll come back and look at that. Specific principles, repetition. Principles, native, repetition. Okay, and then aspect for sun. Again, I will actually go through these. This is quite a bit of repetition, but the yeah, make sure you use a sundial to work out where the sun is, the orientation of your garden, and then yeah, soil pH and structure. So again, been through this before, but soil is like one of the critical factors, obviously, for plants, because plants grow in soil. What is the acidity of the soil? Get a soil test done. Just realised that for a job that I did a few months back, I never did a soil test. So yeah, I'll need to do that. And what type of soil it is. 3 basic types: clay, loam and sand, but there are other types as well. And consider the rainfall and the flow of water on the land and how that affects the soil too, and any kind of foundations or other kind of rubbish tips or something, and make a nutrient budget. Good. Oh, I've got a message in which I don't understand. Okay, structure, space and shape. Yeah. So this is kind of coming on to the design side of things. So orientation of the property, where the buildings are, where the fencing is, and you again thinking in layers. So you're thinking in 3 dimensions for the plants that you're putting in. The basic idea is, for a forest garden, actually I'd say for all garden design, you've got a canopy layer, a shrub layer, and then a kind of ground cover herbaceous perennial layer. And think always think about what plants are going in what space and how they relate to each other, but in 3 dimensions, which is kind of fun. I'd love to do some more kind of 3D design with 3D software, but life is short. And again, tree spacing, critical consideration is the spacing. Always plant for the right size. Yeah, put the right size plant in. So that means knowing what the rootstock is for your fruit trees, or know what that particular size of the tree, the particular size that it will grow to fit that space. Okay, and finally plants. Yeah, RHS Plant Finder and Plants for the Future. Find out what conditions they like and find out what size they grow to. Yeah, right plant, right place. Okay, let's zoom on to the last part. I've got a few minutes. I've only got a couple of minutes here. So in this example, oh, this is it. Oh, is it going to work? Oh, yeah, it's a bit blurry. So what I would suggest doing, like for your design process, is you've done the planning process, so you have a map, and then you have a wish list of features, that stuff that you would like: seating, wildlife pond, polytunnel, greenhouse, raised beds, whatever it is. And you've got a wish list of plants. Yep. So from Martin Crawford's book or Plants for a Future website, you've got a rough idea of what plants you'd like to grow. And what we're doing with the design side is to take your map and then add the observations on that you've made. So you've got observations as well. So you add the observations. So where are the telephone lines? Where's the power lines? Where's the sewage? Where's the tap? Where's the water Where's the water tap? Where's the rainwater harvesting bucket? All this stuff. Figure out what's already there, access, doors, paths, all that kind of thing. And then add the features, and then add the plants. And again, this is the thing to remember, is to put the key structure in first. So think in terms of big trees, big structures, put them in first, jiggle them around, and then you can add the detail later on. And most of the plants are the detail later on. And again, when you're designing, when you're thinking about plants, in the first instance, you're thinking about size and shape, because you're thinking about the shade, you're thinking about how much light they get, but you want to get the structure in first. Yeah. So think big plants, think big structures. So let's kick off. Create a map. You know how to do that already, I hope. So add the observations, your situation, the existing plants that you have. This is a friend's house I designed a forest garden for here. And and yeah, they've got a massive, great big sycamore. Someone's got half a sycamore in the backyard. Existing plants, utilities and structures. So been through all that before, and we'll add these to the map. So I'll zoom in. Oh, so this is kind of a rough idea. So there is an ornamental cherry, 2.5 meter diameter and 4 meters high. So that kind of goes in. That's the first thing that we've done. Next up, whoops, existing plant. Oh, and then there's a Saskatoon already there as well. So 4 meters by 3 meters. And then we add the utilities and the structures. So I kind of hope this format just kind of gives you an idea of things, the order in which to do things. So you've established your situation, you put your existing plants onto the plan, the ones that you aren't going to cut down, obviously, and now it's time to put on the utilities and the structures. So there is a shed which is being kept, which is down here, and there is a telephone line which runs across the back of the garden here. Okay. And now we go on to the features wish list. So you've got your utilities in place, and that's everything that you're kind of keeping. So paths and taps and stuff. You've got your existing plants in place. This is all from your observations. Now the thing to do is to work out where to put your big kind of structural features. And then for this example, we've got a greenhouse. Now greenhouses are great, fab. I actually love a greenhouse. I like polytunnels as well. I like them all. But a greenhouse, you want to kind of generally, this is an interesting one actually. You generally want to have it like full sun, get as much sun as you can. So it's south facing. And you want them orientated, and the same with polytunnels as well. You want them orientated north to south. So they get, hold on a second, north to south. This is from your point of view, east, west. So the sun does that. And a big smiley face around the polytunnel. And if your polytunnel is orientated, or your greenhouse is orientated north to south, it maximizes the sun equally across the polytunnel. If you have it that way round, it's not so good for the amount of sun that the plants get in the greenhouse or polytunnel. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, so orientate your polytunnel north to south, or your greenhouse. So here it's, in this example, zoom in again. In this example, the greenhouse is put on the north boundary, so it's getting the sun. The sun's coming from down here, and it's getting maximum sun. So rises in the east over here, comes down here, and then sets in the west. So this greenhouse is getting lots and lots of sun. This is a sunny spot in this corner here. Pond and veg beds. I would, same thing for a pond. Oh, just a quick note about greenhouses as well. I know somebody who's got a greenhouse who's a professional, she was a professional horticulturalist, had a nursery until recently, and she had a greenhouse. It was in the shade of a sycamore or something, and she said it actually worked out really well because she was growing plants. She wasn't growing like tomatoes and peppers and stuff, so she actually wanted it to be shadier during the summer, so that there'd be less kind of heating up for the plants that she was growing in the greenhouse. So it depends on what you want and what you're growing, so that's always worth bearing in mind. Now with the idea for annual beds, for annual vegetables, same thing. You want full sun. You want sun. You want as much sun as you can get for most annual vegetables. Not all of them, but for most of them. So again, here I have to zoom in. I put the raised bed here. Yeah, and this is all a bit of a guess, and this is what happens. And then for a wildlife pond, the advice I get, this is blimey, I can't see anything. Oh dear me, hold on, I can't see. I'm over time. Okay, Jules Howard's Wildlife Pond book. Yep, that is got kind of information about where to put a pond, and I would kind of recommend putting a pond in full sun, otherwise it gets algae or something. Okay, so and then shed and table, sheds in the north. You don't need sunlight for a shed, so you kind of generally have your more utility stuff. It goes in a shadier spot because it's bikes don't need sunlight, but people do. So you put your table in the kind of in the sunnier spot here. Yep, the seating area in a sunnier spot. And again, oops, it depends. Oops, sorry. Zoom out. So again, it depends. It might be too sunny that you want to have a shady spot for some seating. So it really depends on what you want. This is going back to the feature wish list. Okay, I'll get a move on. So once you have your infrastructure in place, you've got your sheds, you've got raised beds, greenhouse, table, wildlife pond. Now it's time to start thinking about the trees and the shrubs. So the first thing, the kind of the structural stuff in terms of plants, and hawthorn, top left-hand corner, and a hazel. So you might have to move things around. Hazel in the north boundary because it's 3 meters tall, and then move the raised bed. Move the raised bed down here. So, and then apple and crab apple. They're smaller. There's a dwarf crab apple called Laura, and an M9 rootstock for an apple, and a bamboo, which is a non-creeping one. Still put in a container along the back, so that's 4 meters high. So that's on the north boundary for the bamboo. Smaller trees on the south boundary. Okay, way. Oops, this is quite difficult. And now plants, perennials, and veg. Where are we? Yeah, so meadow, herbs, and comfrey. Where are they? Oh, herbs. Oh, the herb bed down here. So the herb bed near the kitchen. So the herbs and your fruits are near the kitchen. And it's kind of getting the full west. It's getting westerly sun, so it should be okay for most of them. If depending upon the herbs that you're growing, there might be Mediterranean herbs, in which case you want more sun for them. So it's always balancing out between the different variables. And then perennial salad. Oh, I've put some in. I can't even remember what they are. Oh, columbine, mallow. No, can't read that. To be honest, I would actually put perennial salad nearer the house, and then shady perennials on the south border because that's shaded by the fence, next door neighbour's fence. Okay, so that's my kind of run through. So backyard forest takeaways. Work with nature, and the design process of it, the kind of planning, the wish list of the features that you want. Work with nature. Always consider nature and natives because you're creating an edible ecosystem. And the process is you gather the information in, you gather your observations, you gather your features wish list, you get your plants wish list, and you incorporate them into the design on the map. Yeah, and it's an iterative process. It takes time to refine it. Okay, so I hope that's useful. Let's jump over to Zoom. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.